All right, folks, it's the time again. It's the Buddy Martin Show. We are here live with you uh, each night, actually 4 nights a week. Glad to be with you here on the SEC Sidelines Network as well. It's story time tonight. We don't get a chance to do this very often. My friend David Whitley, one of the better storytellers in the business, a longtime friend, acquaintance, will join me. We'll chat about what we hate about our jobs, what we like about our jobs, memories, and really why people think we hate the Gators. Do we hate the Gators? Well, we'll just find out what you think and what David thinks. Stand by, David Whitley, next, right here on the Buddy Martin Show.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Evening and welcome to the program. It's recorded tonight on a Tuesday night. We make no bones about it. A lot of people watch this show later in the week, and so we don't try to give you a day-by-day, blow-by-blow updates on games. But we'll just tell you we're doing this in the middle of Florida's game against LSU, which at the moment is going pretty well. Let's go see about my colleague who has to write about this every day and talk about it. If you haven't lived in a city where the team plays and felt the pressure of fans, believe me, it's a different deal. This guy does it every day. He brings it. My friend David Whitley is back for more. He just can't get enough. Good evening, David.
You're right. Just can't get. Isn't that a song? Can't get enough. It's probably a bunch of songs with that lyric.
I think you think of it, Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Stones, but that's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that aspect to it also.
Yeah. You know, David, there was a time in this business that we're in, well, we're still in it, but we noticed a different way, when people thought you got the cushiest job in the world. You get to go to the games free, sit in the press box, eat free food, and have people tell you how great you are, and then go talk to the athletes and the coaches, all of whom admire you. It's such a wonderful job. How wrong is that description these days?
Well, you're still right on the first two. You get to go to the games for free,
Mm-hmm.
and the food is free. And believe me, it's worth every penny most of the time you pay. People don't tell you how great you are, rarely.
Yeah.
And as far as hanging out with the players and coaches and getting to know them, that has gone from a regular thing to it's like a ship's passing in the night. You know, you get a coach up on the podium there for about 10 minutes after a game, and a player, or three, and then that's pretty much it. And there's not much more access during the week. I mean, that's probably been the biggest change I've noticed since I started. I mean, back in the old days, and my old days are still not that old compared to some people, because, I was hearing the old guys then. I'm an old guy now, but the old guys then were saying how access isn't what it used to be, and how hear stories about how they would just go out drinking with coaches, and how many of them would climb up the tower and hang out with Bear Bryant. Now if you're not even allowed in the gate. I mean, if there's a tower, there's a sniper tower to shoot you if you are spotted looking over during a closed practice. And you hear a story about, it used to be much more chummy. I mean, you hear one story that always sticks in my mind was how they came up with the term the grand slam, or when it was Arnold Palmer and was it Bob Drum? I think his name was Bob Drum, a sports writer buddy of his from Pittsburgh. They flew over to the British Open together, and they were just yucking it up, and they came up with I think it was a term, either the Grands, because he was going for the British Open title. This is in the late 50s. Let me put it, I don't travel regularly on a private jet with coaches anymore, or you're on a public jet with coaches. So, I mean, the access and building those relationships is gone. I mean, there's still a lot of great aspects about the job, but it ain't what it used to be.
Yeah, and I don't know about you in your early days. My early days, obviously, were when you were a child, probably 3, not born. But the first real foray into big-time college football was in Atlanta when Florida was playing, I believe, Georgia Tech. Anyway, I know I was in the press box in the locker room that Bobby Dodd was in, so it must have been Florida, Georgia Tech. But I remember the day that that Foreman Bisher came down to the locker room. Mm-hmm. He was almost as big a star as Bobby Dodd. Mm-hmm. When he came in, everybody treated him with kid gloves. It's like, oh, there's Mr. Bisher, whatever, He was equal to in stature of the head coach at that time. The mighty have fallen. It's just changed a bunch. I don't say that to mean that sports writers or journalists should be elevated to any particular level. But the perception of the profession has changed dramatically. And quite frankly, we seem to get in the way of a lot of people. We had a show earlier last week, where let's see, when was it? Last Thursday night. And people started hammering us, and again last night, with, Buddy, why are you so negative about the Florida Gators? Now, I'm not afraid to take a shot if I think one is deserved, and I will write what I think is true, but I don't consider myself being negative. But I don't particularly want to see myself as being a sunshine bumper. I'd like to be somewhere between the two. Mm-hmm. Florida fans are frustrated with Billy. They don't know what's wrong, just like we don't know what's wrong. And they take it out on us as well. Okay, we're big boys. We can handle that, right? It's something that we realize they fans get frustrated. They come at us as well. So I don't know. I'd like to say we're not the enemy here, but if that's what they want to call us, I guess we'll have to wear that. So I'm not sure what kind of feedback you get or your thoughts about that. I've noticed a lot in the last couple of weeks, especially called out by name. And I understand tonight we're having an issue with our comments. So I apologize if some setting is not right where some people can't get in, and I apologize. But anyway, the issue is, hey, I don't know. I don't know how to deal with that, or if I even need to deal with that. What's it like on your end where you're right there every day and in Gainesville, and you feel the heat from a lot of places?
Well, it's a direct reflection on how the teams are doing, because teams are doing well. You have nice stuff to write. Things aren't doing well. You don't have nice stuff to write. But fans, as we all know, is short for fanatic. And when you say something about their team, they take it personally. It's like you're making fun of a member of the family, or you're criticizing a member of the family, and you're not going to look at that objectively. And I understand. It's all. I think that's one thing that hasn't changed. I think whether it was 5 years ago, 25, 55 years, 100 years ago, if someone picked up the paper and read a negative story about their team, there's a lot of the shoot the messenger aspect to it. Yeah. And they get many. But really, you write with what you're given. And when Florida is looking at a 4th straight losing season, obviously there hadn't been a ton of great stuff to write, positive stuff. This isn't Steve Spurrier in the 90s or Urban in the late aughts. It's tough, but you don't want to. You just want to be fair, basically. You don't want to be overly critical. You just want to report what's true. But if you do nothing but be homers and write, this is great, and write it strictly as a fan might write it, well, you don't have any credibility then. And so, that's the main thing. You just want to know that what you do is factual, and fans won't see things the same way as you do, especially when you or writing a column and you're supposed to express an opinion. It's funny. If I can write a column that's after like the Kentucky game this year, there was nothing good to write. I mean, that was just a pie in the face. There was nothing good to write. But some people, and a lot of fans agreed because it's funny. As negative as you are, you look at social media, and it is 10 times worse. I mean, at least what I write about Billy Napier can be printed in the paper. Unlike a lot of stuff that fans will write.
Yeah.
But there's always that element that says, well, you should go light on it because it's this is the home team and you're there to boost them up and support them. No, I mean I've always seen this, and I'm sure you've seen that. My job is just to report what goes on and try to render a valid opinion about it. And people are certainly welcome to disagree with an opinion because that's what an opinion is. But when it comes lately, it's because there's no games to write about. You can take the sunshiny approach and think, man, they're going to be great this year. Look at these guys they're getting. Or you can say, well, look at the schedule they got. It's going to be very tough. And they had a nice recruiting class, but these kids, chances are nobody's going to come in and be Herschel Walker, because those come along every 50 years. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be tough. And, if you're given to saying, no, this is happy time. Well, I mean, you right now you can write anything, and it's just an opinion, but you don't want to have it come back and predict that the Gators they're going to go 9-3 when in your heart that ain't going to happen. Mm-hmm. So you just want to be accurate about things, and it's always a balance, but I think that it's what makes the job fun in a way. Just because you're here and you're in the middle, you're in like the eye of the storm. And, it is more so in this town. I worked in a lot of towns where there wasn't like I was in Orlando for 20 years before this. And when it came to colleges, there was no dominant one, so it wasn't as if I was writing every day about the Gators or I could write about FSU or whatever. And so if you wrote something bad, you get the feedback from the FSU fans if the Seminoles are doing bad. Same with the Gators. But the other side was saying, yeah, that was a very objective column you wrote on the Seminoles stinking. They saw it. So you're always going to see it through the fans. They're going to see it through a fan's eyes.
For sure. I understand we have our comments fixed now, and thank you for your patience, all you folks who listen and watch and write in. And I'm trying to get a feel from you tonight about your perception of the media. And I almost hate that term because it sounds like it's one entity, and it's not. The media is like saying, I hate the people in New York City. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them to hate. Which ones?
Yeah.
And so the media is really miscast as media, but there's certain people who obviously tick you off, et cetera, and certain things and certain writers. And I think what it gets down to, honestly, I think people only do, we don't really care if we're liked or not. We don't really care if you disagree with us. In fact, we want you to have an honest opinion. But we don't sit around trying to get a ballot box full of love notes saying, oh, look how much I'm liked. In this job, that's one thing you'll find out early. If you do that, you're going to get burned. Not to be macho about it or whatever, but the fact is, your job is not to win popularity contests. Your job is to try to put some version of the truth out there that you hope is worth listening to and watching and inspire conversations. So when we do that, we want to make sure that we say, now listen, it's a little different on this website because we have people that we really do care about, and we want them to care about us. They're great people here. I mean, Dan Bond, David Arnold, Tommy Seal, Wally Gator, Becky Carl, I can name them all off there, who are really attentive and listen and watch and offer and share their information. I'd like to hear a heartfelt comment or two from those people about what you want the media to be and whether or not you think we'll fulfill that and what we could do to do it if we didn't. So I don't have all the answers. It's changed a lot for me in the last 58 years. So the whole thing has changed. But having said that, I think it's paramount to have fun. And one thing I like about you, David, is you have a lot of fun in your job. and you take approach to it, and you laugh a lot, and you're fun to be around the press box, and you don't take yourself too serious. That's the number one thing. If you start taking yourself too seriously, you're going to get burnt. You got to understand, you're not the last word and everything, So anyway, so I want tonight to focus on you telling me the parts of your job you really like and that you would really miss if you didn't have it. And I thought about this as Bill Cowher was talking in the pregame, that long pregame, and we'll get to some Super Bowl comments in a minute. But he was interviewing actually Andy Reid about the job and what it was like, and asking him about retirement, which people always ask you if you're over 50, are you going to retire? And he asked Reid, he said, I don't know what that's like. He said, I guess they'll hit me one day and I'll decide. I really don't know. And he said to Cowher, that's what happened to you, right? And he said, yeah, it sort of did. And he said, 17 years ago, I made a decision to leave the game. And he said, hasn't been all that bad. He says, in fact, I kind of like it. And he says, I haven't lost a game in 17 years.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. So anyway, I know you have left sports for various reasons. I have too. I've left the business. I know the parts of it that I miss. I don't know if we can ever have the parts that we used to have or not. I still enjoy it. I enjoy the dialogue. I enjoy the games. You certainly have a better time covering a winning team than you do a team that loses. But sometimes there's a sport about covering a losing program. The people who are driving the program in the ground are buffoons and don't get it. That's not the case here. This is one that kind of teeters on the brink and could go either way. So think about all that. And folks, thanks for tonight for tuning in. And glad to know that we made it up tonight because there was a question whether we would, because half of our gear got left behind. So we've been shopping at Best Buy and ordering stuff online to get up enough stuff to be able to go on the air tonight, and we did. And we're here. We know there's a basketball game going on. We're not going to ruin it for you folks who are waiting to watch the replay. So we'll just go as we go. Let's do this. Let's hear a word from our friends at Meldon Law, one of our great sponsors. We'll come back. And David, I want you to start telling me the best parts about your job, the part that you would miss. And if you want to talk about the worst job, the worst part of your job, that's fine too. I'll swap stories with you on that, all right? Mm-hmm. Agree with David? Go ahead, David.
Oh, sounds good. Let's hear what Jeffrey has to say.
All right, thank you, buddy. Jeffrey Meldon. Jeffrey, you do a show where you get asked a lot of questions. I've got one for you right now, okay, regarding how do you know whether your case is being handled right and what to do about it. In medicine, you can get a second opinion if you're not satisfied with the doctor's opinion that they have. And do you have that in law? Can you do that with lawyers?
Yeah, buddy. As a matter of fact, we get quite a few calls from folks that have signed up, particularly with the big box law firms that they do a hell of a good job of putting ads on TV. But after that, they don't really measure up to the way we try to create a client experience that's outstanding. And we're always willing to review a case and give a second opinion, just like with a doctor, because not all law firms are created equal.
I guess that's the normal thing. Just go to Meldon Law, Google it, and find out, and just give them a call. And like you say, if you come in, you get to see a Meldon. You don't get shuffled off to somebody else. You get to see a Meldon, and that's good to know because a lot of people don't know how to do that stuff, like me. And maybe you can coach us through. So Meldon Law, they won't back down. They will take your questions about your case if you have a question.
Yes, whether it's a new case or an existing case, give us a call. We'd be glad to go over it with you. There's no charge to review your case with you. And a lot of times it makes good sense just to get a second opinion.
Good stuff from Meldon Law. They don't back down, but they will give you a second opinion. All right, thanks very much, Jeffrey Meldon, one of our loyal sponsors. And we'll say this, spoiler alert, we're not going to say what the score is because it'll ruin it for those who are watching the game, but things going very, very well for the Gator basketball team right now. And we can talk about the future of this program, which seems to be trending upward, which we'll do in a minute, because as you know, David, it's all about March and April. And February is trending upward. We'll leave it like that, okay?
Yes, so far so good. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right, so it's just the case here with our people. Well, I really dearly love these people who follow this site and follow us, particularly people like David Arnold, Dan Bond, and some of the comments I asked for. Clifford Jones says, let's see if we can get it up here. I'll tell you some thoughtful comments people put in here, which I appreciate. Florida is on the investigation. I don't know what that is on the being investigated. Football team 3-year losing streak, no continuity with the coaching staff. Billy run from the media, lose a good player to our rivals. Billy equals chaos. Okay, I kind of get where he's coming from there, don't you, David?
Yeah, we've heard that that litany of complaints, and they're all valid. And you can draw one conclusion is that, as you said, it's chaotic, and there's probably a grim future ahead unless things change. Or you can keep the faith. I mean, it's harder to keep the faith going into year 3 than it was year 1, but that's the nature of this business right now. You got to just see, wait and see what happens. But as you said, if you're talking about trending, basketball trending up, football at best trending sideways at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, so we'll get to that because that's something that's the topic of du jour, as it is. Tommy Seal said, I miss when you guys had information not having screens by all the coaches. Well, I don't know when that was exactly. I can tell you that certainly when Steve Spurrier was there, and to some degree, Urban Meyer, we didn't have to deal with smoke screens. They had some, don't get me wrong. But we're able to have frank candor. When you don't allow your head coach to talk, or the coach chooses not to spend time talking about things regarding the program, there is no access for media to be able to ask questions. So I guess the hardcore beat writers, I don't know, who would you put in that group, David? Certainly Mark.
Florida.
Ed Thompson.
Yeah, Edgar Thompson, Orlando, Kevin Brockway works here at the Sun. There's, as far as newspapers go, that's and Matt Baker.
Mark Long from AP.
Yeah, and Mark Long from AP. Then there's the website guys for like On3 and 24/7 and SI Gators, and the big, a bunch, Zach Alberverdi. I work with Zach, and I always screw up his last name. Zach Graham Hall, Jake Rudner. So there's probably about 7 or 8 beat guys who are there, just digging stuff, trying to break stories. It's a little tougher these days because there's just so less access than there used to be to the players. I mean, when I was going to school here and back, you could just sit there at lunch at Yon Hall, player come by, you got a minute, you want to talk, and you go sit and have lunch with him, or you go back up to his dorm room and hang, whatever. Now, it's whoever they'll bring in 2 players on a Monday and maybe 2 more on a Thursday, and they'd speak at the podium, and that's pretty much the extent of it. You have to develop relationships with people around them to get first, or if you're lucky, you might have covered these guys in high school, and they recognize your face, and they will and they will open up more to you. But I mean, so it's more difficult, certainly more difficult in that respect to get to know people. And as a beat guy, it's tough, because if nothing else, these days you have to monitor like 100 different Instagram and Twitter accounts, see who's going to say what, and and it's really tough if you have a guy who just might pop off, because and make news. And I'm thinking, boy, what if? Because I had some friends that used to cover the NBA, and when Charles Barkley was there, they said, you just have to go sit in front of Barkley's locker after the game, even if he hadn't done anything, because you don't know what he's going to say. And if he says something, it's going to be newsworthy, and and there's no telling what he might say. So you had to monitor that guy. But now you're constantly on the lookout for people, because that's where news is broken a lot of time. Guys, they can bypass you. It used to be everybody, if they want to get the message out, they talk to the local TV or radio or guy or newspaper person. Now they just go to their Twitter account and say, I'm announcing I'm transferring to here, transferring to there, and they can say whatever they want. And that also drives the schools crazy, and to a lesser, the professional teams, because they don't have that control. They would like to. They monitor these guys, and they tell these kids not to do anything silly. Don't write anything on Twitter or anywhere else that'll come back to haunt you. But you're still, when you basically hand in a loaded digital gun to 100 teenagers and guys in their early 20s, and I don't know my maturity level when I was 19, I might have written some silly stuff too and come back to haunt. So but in fact, I'm sort of surprised it doesn't happen more often, that someone gets announced and they just go on a tear on Twitter. You see it occasionally. But for the amount of stuff that does go on that still doesn't get out, I guess that speaks to just a team ethic that some of these people have, that players still have, that you just keep things in house unless things are really bad. But because you knew, like this past season, that Trevor Etienne, he was not happy with his role. He wanted to carry the ball more, and you could see it because his brother was popping off for him.
Yeah,
but he didn't do it himself.
Right.
It really wouldn't serve him well in the long run. But you just always have to, if you're a beat writer now, you have to be on guard for that kind of stuff.
Because they have leverage. They have leverage, and they can use it, which is what they do in situations like that. And I can't say I blame them. I think it's important here. Remember, also, there's joy in the game. And really, to be honest with you, it's one of the things I've loved about my job is the joy I've gotten from knowing people in situations and having people's success stories. Let's be honest, the great themes of literature is survival over struggle, whatever. And sports gives that opportunity to dig into that. But let me get back to it. Here's a thoughtful guy who has a medical practice up here in Northwest Florida, big fan of ours and the show. And he comments here, he says, David Arnold says, I think the media does a lot of borrowing from each other. I would like more investigation, both good and bad. I like the fun. I would like more insights, strategy, and personal stories on players, coaches, etc. Your comments on that?
Well, there is borrowing, but it's not so much. I don't think that has changed much. What it is someone will break a story, and so then other people they don't borrow the stuff. They will just they will basically repeat the news, what's going on. And then they will try to get it themselves, but they will give the other person credit for doing it. I agree. I would like to see more personal stuff and that kind of thing. But that gets back to just having access to these guys and be able to sit down and chat. Hey, tell me about yourself. And that's hard to do when they're just sitting up there standing at a podium for 10 minutes being asked questions by 12 different people. To get that personal kind of story, you need to sit down and have a one-on-one interview with them. And it's not impossible, but it's a lot harder than it used to be. And I'm talking mainly just in the college setting, or mainly the football setting. It's not that difficult with other sports to do. If you just really said, look, I would like 30 minutes to sit down and talk with really the less publicized the sport, the easier it is to do. If I picked up the phone tomorrow and called UF Sports Information and said, I'd like to sit down and do a long story on the lacrosse goalie, she'd say, sure, when can we deliver to you? How much time you want? If I called the SID and says, hey, can I get 30 minutes with Graham Mertz? It'd be like, click. We'll see you. He'll be available, second week of spring practice, that kind of thing.
You bring up an interesting point, and I'll get to this in a second about the personal relationships. of certain players that you sort of click with, a
Yeah.
few that you, let's say, give me your three Hall of Famers in terms of your responses from them, your time with them, your joy of the relationship and what have you. But I think it also speaks to the issue of it's not about our job of to find players to like or the coach liking us. And I got accused the other night. And by the way, I have interviewed, I think every coach since Bob Woodruff as a one-on-one. It's kind of a pride thing, but I understand sometimes things change. And I started out by asking for an interview with the coach Napier when he first arrived from the SID, Rick Hurtado. And I said, look, I know I'm not, Mark Long of the AP here. I'm just asking. I would like some time for you to find me 15 or 20 minutes where I can come there and sit and talk and maybe get to know a few insights from Billy. And he gave me said, well, we're busy right now. I get it, but I'm just not going to go away. I'm going to keep asking you. And for over 2 years, I've asked, and I've never gotten an interview with Billy. Mm-hmm. Now, I that's not tragic. I don't take it as a personal affront. I'm kind of curious why others have gotten them, and maybe I'm not important enough. That's fine. And a couple of my colleagues have really gotten mad about it and stated their position here on the air. And I appreciate that, not necessary. And then I have a guy last night on the show say, well, Buddy doesn't like Napier. He's negative because Napier won't give him an interview. That is absolutely not true. And I'll be honest with you, there's a part of me like saying, I don't care about interviewing Billy Napier anymore. But I wanted to then, and it was a kind of a pride thing. So it's not about our relationship, how important we are to him or whatever. It's about being able to do our job well. And I agree with David. I'd like to do some of those things too, as well. I'd like to have more original information. We'll talk about that in a second because I've got one story I want to share with you. First, I want to tell folks to remind you about TitanMRI.com. Gainesville, a popular place to go because you can get same-day scheduling for MRIs, and you don't have to have, if you don't have insurance, you have to use a cash or card, you can do that. It's become a very popular place for folks to go. If you've ever been to get an MRI, you know the difficulties that exist, including the tight quarters and the claustrophobia you get when you go to one of those things. I most recently had mine. I experienced that. They have accommodations for that at Titan MRI. And people are coming from all over the state to go there to Gainesville just because of the popularity, availability. They're open. They're more flexible hours. It's something you should check out. Go to TitanMRI.com and find out more about their program, why they're so popular, why people from Ocala, Gainesville, the villages all around the area are coming there to get their MRIs. TitanMRI.com. Excuse me. All right, so back to the program, the idea. Dan Bond, who's one of our regulars, who does some writing for us, does a good job. He has a good comment here. He said, reporting the good and the bad is the only way to do it. I know today's media and coach relationships are different and make it harder. Too many coaches take the silent approach. Yeah, that's true, Dan, but you know what, David, the fans don't really care. That's our problem, right?
Oh, sure. And nor should they care, that about this. Although, I've always tried to relay this to like the middlemen who set up these interviews or don't set up these interviews, is that, they would like good publicity. And if you say, I want to write, a story, a human interest story on this guy that people would like, this a nice thing, and why they don't make that easier to do. And that's not a new phenomenon. There's a certain protectiveness about the people have that think the media is out to get them, and you have to earn their trust. But even then, there's so many rules now about just access, and that it's hard to do. I have no, Billy is probably as busy a person as there is in Gainesville. Especially the way that job has evolved. I do think after 2 years, though, he probably could have found 15 minutes, though, for Buddy Martin.
Perhaps.
At some point. Yeah. And you do try to keep it separate. I can honestly, I don't think anybody is more negative toward Billy because they may not think that they get enough time, or access or whatever, than they would be otherwise. Although, I'd also be lying to say that if you develop a relationship with somebody and you really get to like them, you do pull. I've pulled punches before. It's just human nature, because you don't want to kick a guy when he's down, and you want him to do well and that kind of thing. I remember, boy, when I was covering the Bucks, and they some tumultuous times there, Sam. This is back 30 years ago. Sam Weiss was a nutcase, but fun to cover because he's very very open. So I tried not to be too negative to him, and then came Tony Dungy, who basically he's an angel in human form. The guy, and so it was when they did lose, it was almost it was like you had to force yourself to write something negative. And I'm glad that it turned out so well for him there, even though he eventually got fired. And you had that way, and you can make the bad guy out to be the people who fired him at that point. Yeah. But it's only human nature to not be quite as critical of somebody that you really like.
Yeah.
So I like Billy, but I would really like to know him more, to have that personal relationship. But on the list of things he has to do every day, chumming up the media is somewhere between number 632 and number 634.
Not important. We're not that important to them anymore, and we don't influence their lives that much. They're all about trying to change them out of a 17-year-old in Dallas or something.
Their opinion is much more important than ours.
It is what it is. That's what we have. Now, before I get into this personal story about my favorite athlete and why, and I'll ask you to do the same, I'm going to give you a water break to go do that for a minute and second, so you can come back, check the ball game, come back, whatever you want to do. I just want to say that it's been a privilege for me to be a member of this fraternity. And it is a fraternity, especially if you're around it as long as we are. And for the most part, at least the ones I've known, journalists are hardworking, honest, underpaid people who do the best job they can and give you the best version of the truth they can without regard to personal gain. And I think very unselfishly serve this public that they don't even know about. And they're trying to do the job the best they can under very bad conditions. So I wish they were more appreciated. I understand that if some folks don't, that's the way it is. But I've been privileged to serve with some really great ones. I've also been privileged to have some people I've covered who've been a great privilege to me. I would say my all-time favorite person to write about and cover all these years has been Jack Nicklaus. It's a long story behind that, and I got to know him pretty well, and I considered it an honor to be in his presence, and many, many times, and talked about many great things and great conversations. What a mind he was always thinking, stories that he told. But you think of yours, and then I wanted to say that I hope I live through it long enough to see this program turned around. It sure would be nice to see them back and being competitive. It was a glorious day when Urban Meyer brought it back, what Steve Spurrier did. I know Florida can never be Alabama. I know it's going to be a long haul. But the one thing I hope doesn't happen is that Billy Napier gets blindsided by his own lack of vision and stubbornness. But maybe he should have changed. And this is where I get into trouble about being negative. When you have the issues you have, and you keep making mistakes and wrong hires, and you keep having too many men on the field, and you keep having the same number of jerseys on the field, and you can't stop people on third down, and you hire a guy, and then he's gone in 5 weeks. Okay, so he had a great relationship with Bill O'Brien, and whatever, he lasted 5 weeks. But, look, you sign contracts, don't you? And then maybe if you didn't know that about the guy, you should have known that about the guy. Again, Billy isn't the only person that makes mistakes. Coaches have erasers on their pencils, like everybody did, and they need to erase those things to go forward. I really do wish him the best, but if I had to make a wage right now on my salary as to how it would come out, I'm not sure how it would go. So I'll give you the response to that. Then I'll give you a water break, and I'll talk about Carlos Alvarez, my all-time favorite game.
Okay. Is this the water break, or are you talking to Carl? Yeah.
You're talking first about
Okay.
reminded to what I said, then I'll go for a water break.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm the same way with when it comes to Billy. I'd like to see him do well, but reality is that it's a pivotal year right now, and the mistakes that were made have been made are head scratchers, no doubt about it. So and you couldn't sit there and pretend they don't happen, because they happen in front of 60 or 80,000, 90,000 people, not even counting the TV audience. So you got to write about them, and you got to hammer them, and that doesn't mean you're being negative. It's just mean you're just being a realist, and you can't when the emperor has no clothes, you got to say he has no clothes. It doesn't mean you don't want him to get clothes, but at that moment he doesn't have clothes. And as far people ask, well, do you want are you a Gator fan? I'm not a fan, but it's always better to cover a winning program, because people are just happier. They're in a better mood, and everybody's up, and so I would like the Gators to win just from that aspect, just because I'm living in Gainesville, and there's a different sense of things, a different feeling with everybody, that hey, Gators are okay, great. And so in that respect, although it's funny, I can only recall one time where people really wanted to win one game, and I think it was like in the late '80s, mid '80s, that if the Gators won their last game, I think it was Kentucky, they were going to go to the Aloha Bowl in Hawaii. They lost. I think they're going to go to Birmingham. So I wasn't there for this game, but I think all the sports writers showed up wearing Hawaiian shirts that day in the press box, and they made no bones about it. That they wanted the Gators to win that day, because that was going to be a week's vacation on the company in Hawaii, as opposed to a drive to Birmingham. So
wow. Which one? Flip a coin. Which one?
Yeah, there's definitely cheering in the press box that day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great book title, No Cheering in the Press Box. All right, David, go get your water. I'll get you back I'm going to talk about my favorite person and guy I covered, Carlos Alvarez, and respond to some of our listeners who have some comments to make. So, David, right back on the other side. We expect to have a basketball score soon. I'll say this much, it's going very, very well. So, David, back in just a moment. All right, so questions tonight, comments. First of all, Van Der, who, by the way, Van, I think your comments have been more and more constructive. I think you've offered some interesting insights, and I appreciate it. I asked the question, did you ever work with David Halberstein? Sick, question mark. No, I didn't, but I did work with and for Joe Halberstein. You're probably thinking, mixing up David Halberstam, the famous writer, with Joe Halberstein, who was sports editor of the Gainesville Sun for about 15 years. While I was in college, I worked with Joe. I did work with Joe, yes. Good man. Joe had a lot of handicaps, overcame them all. First of all, he was blind in one eye. He wore hearing aids. He had a heart trouble. And he spoke with a speech impediment. But a wonderful, sweet guy, and one of the fastest typewriters I've ever seen. Joe could once turned out a column in 17 minutes. He could really type fast. So, yeah. Thanks for asking that, Van. I'm glad to talk to you about that. Tommy Seal is onto something here I think we'll talk about at some point. Maybe not tonight until the score is completed. This basketball team is going to be dangerous in this tournament. I agree with you, David. Tommy, I wouldn't want to play them. And now we think about it, since we got baseball starting Friday as well, the basketball team appears to be on the upswing, even though there have been some bumps in the road for the football program. Life for a Gator fan, by the way, don't forget gymnastics and other things like that. Life for Gator fans, not bad right now. Not too bad. Let's see what else we got here. Can Golden coach the football team too, Mr. Bassett? Good question. Well, I don't know. Maybe. And then Van Der says, no, we need Sully to coach the football team. And then Dan Bond says, Walton to coach the football team. Didn't mention softball, which is right high. So, yeah, Dan says satire. All right, so I want to talk about this, and I think David's back, but I'll start. He got his cup of coffee and his hamburger and his check with the update on the scores, and talk about a guy named Carlos Alvarez. You never know how things are going to go when you're covering a team. And I was a young sports writer. I would take my day off, basically afternoons, and drive to Gainesville and sit in the practice field because no one covered the team in those days. And practice was allowed to, and I would go up there and sit and watch and learn. And then the coaches began to notice me up there. Every now and then, Ray Graves would drop by and stop and talk to me on private press conference. And I got to know some of the coaches, Fred Pankos, Ed Kinsler, and they kept telling me about this young guy, Carlos Alvarez, who was going to be something special. Well, David, he was not only special as a player, he was special as a person. And I got to know Carlos Alvarez as a sophomore because freshmen couldn't play. And a quarterback named John Reeves, who was from Tampa, the big arm, was a great player. And John was a highly recruited guy. Probably got some NIL money that back in those days that they didn't call it that. But John was a tremendous player, and they had a relationship that few quarterbacks and wide receivers had. And they worked all summer long, all the hot summer day, running routes on air. And they were really good clicking and timing. Carlos was very fast. Carlos had, I wouldn't say world-class speed, but right up there. And he was also shifty and physical and great hands. And John had a cannon for a gun. And we all don't, but there's a story of time and place talking about great moments and great bombs. And the one that year that came on third play of the game was really now famous play. Reese Alvarez, I think 73 yards for a touchdown against Houston, a team that was ranked number one by Playboy, the photos were, put Florida on the map. And that led to the great season they had. Carlos was a consensus All-American, which was unheard of as a sophomore. I think the last person before him was Doak Walker who did that. A great player and a terrific human being and a great talker. I got to know him, his family. I remember his family came up from Miami. They were of course, from Cuba. I remember they had goat skins with the wine in them. I remember that part. And they allowed me to go to dinner with them. And I got to know the family, and I really, really liked them. Came to the end of the season, and the ignominious decision of the people at Florida to let Ray Graves go after the winningest season in history, and going to the Gator Bowl to beat Tennessee, coached by Doug Dickey, and won the SEC. And Graves lied about leaving, I think, hoping to hang on to it. And I was with Carlos in Miami right before the Orange Bowl game. And I asked him about if it was true that Ray Graves was not coming back. That Gene Ellison, who was most popular guy, wasn't going to get the job, would it affect his decision to play in Florida, and would he consider transferring? He said, yes, I would. Well, that was big news. Since All America, we broke that story out of there. Actually, I broke it and gave my carbons to another writer, John Critton of the Miami News. He printed it, and they gave the credit to him. So, but anyway, Carlos was a rare human being throughout his life. As you know, if you've seen the movie, which is out now on Carlos, was an extremely rare human being, great representative, obviously Ring of Fame, Ring of Honor. And my favorite Gator of all time was Carlos Alvarez. David?
Mm-hmm. I don't. It was before my time when he was doing his thing, but I recall the name, and it's just any Gator. You hear that name, and it to just put a smile on your face, because I wish I'd have been there that day in '69 when they threw that the third play of the season, whatever it was, when they threw that bomb, and basically it changed the world there. It changed Gator Nation forever, I think. But I've gotten to know Carlos some over the last few years, just when stuff comes up. And I can see how he would have been great to cover because he's always very honest about things and frank, and he is a very good talker, and he says what's on his mind, So I can believe that back in those days that he would have been honest with you and said, yeah, I might transfer. And I bet that was news. Of course, these days, heck, by the time you asked him, he'd have been gone. He'd have been in the portal getting goodness. What would Carlos have gotten NIL money back? These days if he had come
Probably a
along.
man and a half.
Oh yeah, but yeah, he would be. I would say, I haven't really covered the Gator as a career enough. I've certainly liked some of the players more than others, but I can't say I really have developed a long-term relationship with any. I'm just because I never covered them on a consistent basis. To where and again it is and these days it's not like I'm going to chum up a lot with a 17-year-old kid or 18-year-old kid as much as you could back in the day. But you mentioned Nicholas. You're right about him. I was always so impressed with him is that after a round of golf, he would come in and do interviews, but he would have time for everybody, whether you were the guy at CBS or just some kid from a 35-watt radio station. He would come over and give you as much time as you wanted and listen to your questions and make you think that like you really mattered to him. And
amazing.
Yeah,
there's a great story behind that. I can tell you real quickly. I experienced firsthand. And remember, I grew up at a time when Palmer was the king, and Nicholas came along and knocked him off. And Nicholas was the fat kid from Ohio. Everybody hated. In fact, they used to call him Ohio Fats. Flip flop head and big old trousers, and he was 21 years old and couldn't miss a putt and was killing the king. It was a matinee idol, And so I came along at that time and watched him and covered a lot of golf, Living Masters and Opens, whatever. And I saw this guy emerge, and I went to work in Westchester for the Gannett Company, and about that time, Nicholas started winning majors and everything. And he was representative for Eastern Airlines, did commercials. I was working as a columnist in Westchester County. The people from Eastern, their agency, called me and said, "How would you like to spend the afternoon with Jack Nicklaus while he's making a commercial at Westchester Country Club?" I said, "Yeah, I'd like to do that." Okay, well, meet us out there. So I go out and I speak to Jack. By that time, Jack has lost 50 pounds, looking sharp, dressing really sharp. Let his hair grow out a little bit, looking kind of cool, and super friendly. And what he did was he knew Arnold was so charming, and he was able to call the media by their first name, and would give them. He would go in the press room for 30 minutes and say, "Come on back to the locker room, guys. We'll finish this. I'll buy you a beer." And 10 guys would go to the locker room and have a beer. Arnold, and this is what Jack was up against, and he knew this. So Jack began to work on his appearance. He got real personal with his comments. He learned the name of every writer in the press room, called them by name, and he started winning. And all of a sudden, Jack got very popular. And like you said, some guy for a 35-watt radio station was important as the other guy. And he was great about doing that, and also about how to talk to the big guys. They loved his conversation. We got a little more involved in the intelligence side. But anyway, so Jack comes to Westchester Country Club. I meet him there. He goes out, shoots a commercial, gets a pair of white golf shoes out of the pro shop because he didn't bring them. Went out, hit 10 or 12 balls, got through, and he walked out with his shoes. He said, "What size shoe do you wear?" Dummy me not picking up on it. I said, "Oh, I'll wear about a 10 and a half." I said, "What size though?" He says, 11. I said, "Those 11 and a half." I said, "Those won't fit me." I think, take the dead gum shoes, buddy, you idiot. Yeah. Jack Douglas just gave you his shoes.
So, have him autograph them.
Exactly. Well, his people said it went so well, we got to go to Manhattan now and go see some people in interviews in a limousine. Would you like to go with us? Well, sure, I'd like to. So now I get to talk personal to Jack, really personal things that I thought were amazing. And we drove by Yankee Stadium. He said, "Oh, I remember I was here 15 years old. They had a player named Gene Whitley playing the outfield. I saw him hit a triple." Because his mind is like that. He remembers everything, So I got a chance to spend the whole day with Nicholas. and got done and really enjoyed my time with him. So the Westchester Classic was coming up in the next week. And so I wrote this long story about the ugly duckling became the swan, how good he looked, how he acted, how he became Prince Charming, and all this whole thing, whole image makeover. And Jack saw the story, and most people don't comment on your story. And Jack said, I really liked the story that you wrote. Well, okay, I'll take that, right? That's good for me.
Mm-hmm.
From that moment on, we struck up a relationship that lasted all these future years to a point where I started doing Remember Sport Magazine?
Oh yeah.
I did a Sport Magazine story on Nicholas. I had a hard time getting a hold of him. So I called him in Palm Beach and I said, I want to meet you. He said, okay, well, I'm going to be in Memphis. All right, I'll grab a plane. I'll see you in Memphis. I grab a plane and go to Memphis next week. I get in, go over to the press room. Where's Jack Nicklaus? Oh, he withdrew. He what? He withdrew. I wrote back to Nicklaus, thanks for the heads up. Oh, sorry about that. I had a cold. First time he had ever withdrawn from a golf tournament. And I was in Memphis. So I get in my plane, I go back. And he says, the next occasion will be in the Trobe at the Arnold's tournament in 2 weeks. Think you can come there? I said, I'll come to the Trobe. Yes, I will. My dad happened to be in town. His wife was from Pittsburgh. I said, Dad, I'll drive you back over there. I'll go to the Latrobe and see Jack. So I dropped Dad off at Pittsburgh. I stopped to get gas and had the radio playing. And I heard the guy say, bad news about Jack Nicklaus withdrawing from the Arnold Palmer's tournament after hurting his finger. What? He withdrew again on me. I'm in Latrobe. And I finally said, Nicklaus, look, I can't chase you around it forever here. He says, okay, I'm coming to the Westchester Classic in 2 weeks. I promise you. We'll have dinner. We'll talk, whatever. Okay, good. So Jack came. He played around, whatever. We went over to the club where he was staying, went to his room. He says, we're going to go downstairs and have dinner. He said, but you don't have a jacket, right? I said, no, I don't. He said, grab one of those off the shelf. I put it on. It came up to right here. It's 3 inches too short. Believe it or not, his arms are short. But anyway, so we had dinner that night there. Came back up to his room, and Jack was a closet smoker. He smoked L&Ms. And I would have a puff every now and then. We came back. He had a bottle of scotch. He put it up on his dresser. We drank a half a bottle of scotch and smoked 2 packs of cigarettes. He told me all kinds of things I couldn't believe were possible. A great interview. Naturally, at this point in time, I'm thinking, I think I'll quit my job and follow Jack and write a book. My guys, it was great. So that was how my situation started with Jack, and I never forgot him. Saw him many times, consider him a friend, not a buddy, but a friend. And he was just the best, was the best, still is the best in many ways. So that's my story. Sorry for falling over Jack, but that's my thought.
Well, he's worth fawning over. I mean, he's one of those guys that you really never hear a bad word about, and when you mention, the pluses of this job and the great thing, one of my memories, and if you've ever covered golf, it's not like the Masters. And one of the Masters memories I have was, I think it was 98 when he was like 59 years old, and he made a run on that Sunday, and they said there's nothing like the roar of a crowd at the Augusta, and there's nothing like the roar of a Nicklaus crowd. And I mean, it was just amazing. You could just hear something going on, on the back, and I go, what's going on? And it says Nicklaus was making a charge. I go, my God, he stepped out of the history books, and he's doing this. And that's one of those things that I've never wanted to take for granted, is how lucky I was to experience something like that, and just to be there. And that's one of the things about the job that that's what makes it worth the aggravation and worth the hair pulling and everything else. Is you just look back and you say, man, I was fortunate enough to have those memories and to hear something like that and be there.
Well, we're going to time it out here, so we get to just about the time the Gator game winds up. It's a nail biter. We'll tell you that much, and then when it gets over, we'll let you know what goes on. And David, you can go take a peek for a second while I finish up this and tell folks about our sponsors. We'll get right back and watch the end of this. So stand by just a minute back, and we'll talk more with David about that. By the way, I want to thank our sponsors tonight, especially our folks at RentStar. Star Medical Research has a tremendous program where they have clinical research trials in Ocala, and they're trying to find a better way to treat us. The data they use goes to biomedical companies, and they use that data to help treat us and things that we have wrong with us, from fibromyalgia uh, to to the many things that go wrong with our bodies, not the least of which is dementia and Alzheimer's. So, if you would like to be a part of that program, they do these trials because they want to know more about what's in our DNA here. And they send the information off, and you can take part and be a member of the cast. If you want to go to rinstar.net and check it out, find out more about their clinical trials, you can be a part of those if you qualify. And in some cases, you're paid and compensated for your time and travel. Rinstar Medical Research. They do a terrific job in our town, and they are terrific at what they do. All right, back to David and see if David has the final report here. It looks like it's getting close. Lo and behold, David, are we going to final yet?
Yes, and let's just say it was an exciting finish.
Well, we can say that now. We said, all right, so it looks like a big W for Florida.
Yes, let's say that it looked like they were going to run them out of the building.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite that way. It was quite the finish. But if you were waiting to tape this game because you were watching this instead, which I think you should have.
Good have. Yes, thank you for doing that.
Yeah. That you want to stay tuned to the last second because it's very interesting. But yes, but the hot streak continues.
There you go. David, thank you so much for sharing this hour with me. I'm going to call this the Hour of Power with David Whitley. We sit and talk about things that matter to us, maybe nobody else, but it's to have a compadre like you and a person in the business and someone to spend the time and share stories. Thank you so much. Read David at the Gainesville Sun. If you see him, buy him a beer and give him your autograph. It might be worth something one day. Thank you, David.
All right. Good night, buddy. Thanks.
Good night. Thanks. The great David Whitley. Not only a good writer, good guy, good friend, but also fun to have on the show. All right, folks. Congratulations, Gator Basketball. Back tomorrow night. Lots of guests right here at the Buddy Martin Show.